What's up, booktube? It's Leah Cooper, and today I want to reflect back on the reading challenges and channel goals I set for myself in 2020, how I did with those. I want to talk about my reading stats for 2020, including charts, because who doesn't love a good chart? And I also want to set myself some new goals for 2021. Quick YouTube disclaimer, this channel is not monetized by myself. Feel free to run ad blocker. If you see any offensive ads played during this video, drop me a comment down below. But frankly, just use ad blocker because fuck YouTube. And with that out of the way, let's talk about how 2020 went. I'll talk about the channel goals first because I think I did poorly with those. One of my channel goals was to experiment with new content, and literally when I wrote that down in my little notebook, I put LOL next to that because I didn't do that at all. And the other thing I didn't write it down, but I do think I set myself a challenge to, like, on average post 4 videos a month so that it would be like average out to a video a week. For a while this year I did that, especially after I got laid off. I really did focus on trying to do that, but once school started, I just didn't have the mental energy to do that or really do anything besides wrap-ups, just to kind of make a record of what I had read. And the same goes for new content experimentation. I don't want to vlog when I literally just live in like a 10 by 10 room, which is my reality. I live in a 10 by 10 room. I don't have enough space to live. Like, everything's piled up and I have like 3 feet of empty floor space. It's not aesthetically pretty or pleasing, like, to anyone, and I don't want to vlog that experience. It's not interesting content. And so going forward into the next year, I'm not setting myself any channel goals, because again, I do have school for another 6 months and I'm stuck in a 10 by 10 box that I don't fit into, and I just have no desire to like put pressure on myself to make content that I can't make. So I will continue to not do vlogs or anything like that. Would I like to do author content? Sure. I would like to, more than anything, just start writing regularly again. It's kind of why I'm going back to school. But will I record any of that? I don't know. So like for the first half of the year, like literally all I want to do with my channel is to continue to do wrap-ups and keep a record of the books that I read. And that's really the only expectation I'm putting on myself. And that's more for me than for anything else. I think I also intended to do more standalone book reviews. I have a note in here that I had wanted to do more awards reading. I wanted to read for the Hugos this year and it just didn't happen. I did do fairly well at reading for the BookTube SFF Awards and making combined reviews for the things I read for that, which was fine. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to read for the BookTube SFF Awards this year, to be perfectly honest. I just don't know if they're for me. It's kind of like reading the Goodreads Choice Awards books. You're never going to catch me doing that because the stuff that gets nominated for that's kind of lame and not representative of the genre. And like half the things that get nominated for the BookTube SFF Awards, like I don't enjoy, there's always a couple of authors who always get nominated who I'm just like, I'm not reading from them. So like, why even bother? For the Hugos, I'm not even going to push myself to do it because again, school goes till June and I'm just not going to worry about it. So I'm not going to do any of those things. Is this a terrible way to start out 2021? I can't tell. It feels kind of like a terrible way, but at the same time, I think I'm just being really honest. I've just accepted that probably this year, the channel is not going to grow at all, and I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm going to do the kind of content that I want to sit down and do, which is mostly wrap-ups, where I talk about the things that I've read and how I felt about them, and whether I'd recommend them or not, or what they're about, etc. And if that's all I feel like doing, that's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna still try to do like monthly book recommendations. I do have a Goodreads group I run called #monthlybookrecs. I'll leave a link to it down in the description box if you're interested. I post a monthly topic, and it's usually tries to be pretty open-ended how you want to interpret it, and you just create a rec list based off that topic. Tag the group if you post on Twitter or anything so we can find it, and that's it. So I do still kind of want to do those two things, and beyond that I don't think I can commit too much else, because that's life. I feel a little sad having talked about all that, because it's like I just don't have the energy to make goals and challenge myself, and I do kind of like to make goals, set goals, and challenge myself. But I can't get up the excitement about that right now. At least not for something that feels so futile. And like trying to, for instance, grow the channel enough to where I can monetize it myself just feels so futile that why bother? Why put that stress on myself, Okay. So let's talk about the reading goals I had for myself in 2020, because I feel like I did pretty decently at these. Well, I did so. My first goal was just straight up to read 72 books this year. This was my Goodreads goal, and this includes like novels, novellas, short stories, like anything I would count in my spreadsheet as like a singular title, and that would have a standalone entry on Goodreads. So I totally did this, and I'm very proud of myself. This year I did kind of separate, but I did track both reading I did of my own volition and reading I did for school. So if we're just looking at the reading I did for myself, I read 69 novels, 9 novellas, 1 anthology, that's going to be a novel-length anthology, 6 short stories. Basically, I read 79 things. I wouldn't really count the 6 short stories in my like total number of things read. If we did count them, it would be a total of 85 things read this year. But a lot of these short stories were really short. So let's just call it 79 things read. My goal was 72. Woohoo! Pretty dang good. In addition, I also read 8 things that were just for class. So that was like 1 play, 1 poetry collection, and 6 short essays. My next goal I didn't do quite as well on. I wanted to specifically have 60 to 70% of the things that I read, I wanted to come from my physical TBR. Now, I made this goal when I was working at the bookstore, and I was buying anywhere between like 15 and 30, 40 books a month, and my physical TBR collection was growing rapidly. And so that's why this number was so high. Obviously, I got laid off at the end of March, and I stopped buying books. So the fact that the percentage of things that I read from my physical TBR is not 60 to 70% doesn't bother me too much. So let me explain. Again, looking at the stats, I'll pop up a little picture here. You can see the breakdown of everything I read, and that the other half of this is I wanted to read more from my TBR than read from the library. In 2018, 2019, and actually in 2017 probably too, I used my library a lot, which there is nothing wrong with that. I love my library. My library is my primary source of new releases, and it's my only source of audiobooks, and I love it for that, and I'm so thankful that I am in a good library system. However, I do tend to prioritize library books instead of my own books, because library books have due dates and I want to get anything I check out, I want to get it read. So that was the other half of this challenge. I wanted to focus more on reading my own stuff. So as you can see in this picture, 41% of the things I read this year came from the library, and 28% of the things I read came from my physical collection. But you'll also see that 9.7% of the things I read came from my ebook collection. So I've decided to go ahead and kind of look at Kindle owned and physical owned together, combine them, instead of just focusing on my physical TBR, because I do have a lot of ebooks that I haven't read that have just been sitting on my Kindle forever. I like to think of this as 38% of the things I read this year came from my own collection, and 41% of the things I read came from the library. And that's almost an equal split, which obviously is not 60 to 70%. Not even close. like not even close. But it's such a better, like, the balance between those two is so much better this year. Like, I'm so happy to see that it was almost equal, that I think that that is personal growth. So I didn't hit this goal, but I did a lot better at this goal than I have in the last couple of years. And also, I won't lie, I did start checking out more things from the library after I lost my job, like on purpose, just because those were the things I wanted to read. And I was in, a not super happy place because I had COVID, quarantine, anxiety, depression, etc. And I started reading for the booktube SFF awards after I lost my job, and I did a couple of readathons, and I checked out books from the library at kind of willy-nilly, whereas before that I had not been going to the library, and that's fine again. So like I kind of not sabotaged myself, but I definitely didn't stick to the habits I had formed that would allow me or enable me to read 60 to 70% from my own shelves, but I still did almost 50-50. Okay, and then two more challenges. One of them I don't think I talk about in the video, but it was a challenge I made to myself, and that was I wanted to increase the average page length of the things that I was reading. So for the last couple of years, my average page length has been pretty low. I think in 2019, it was about 288 pages. It was definitely under 300. And then the year before that, it was even lower, possibly more like 260 or so pages. And so this year, I really wanted to increase that. One of my goals was to challenge myself to read longer books, specifically longer books off my physical TBR, which I find intimidating, to work on that. And this is a challenge that I very much succeeded at. Again, I separated out the stats of my class reading because obviously for class I just read a bunch of short essays and they were skewing the average page length. But when we only look at the things that I read for myself, for my own edification, the average page length that I read this year is 315 pages. And that's still pretty low, I know, but for me that was a big step. I read a lot more books that were over the 300 or 400 page mark than I had in any other year. I'll go ahead and pop in a little picture here that shows you the breakdown of everything I read. This includes class reading and personal reading, number of things in each page length spread. So you can see that far and away, the bulk of my reading fell between 300 and 399 pages, which is very average number of pages, right? The reason the less than 100 pages bar is so high, again, class reading. But the thing I really want to focus on is the fact that I genuinely read almost as many books over 399 pages as I did under, if you discount the class reading, which is skewing the lower stats so much. And that makes me feel really accomplished. Like, I'm really glad that I pushed myself to do that. And I had a lot of fun ultimately doing it. And then the final official goal I set for myself was that I made a year-long TBR, and I called it my 20 books I want to read in 2020. Again, I made a video about this. I can link it up in the cards if you're interested in watching it. And this is 20 books off of my mostly physically owned TBR. I think 19 of them came from my physical TBR and 1 came from my ebooks. And these were just books that I wanted to challenge myself to read this year. Read or DNF and unhaul, And I read 15 out of the 19, which I really, really, really wanted to complete this and read 20 out of 20. And I was on track. Like, that's actually the thing that kind of kills me. I was on track to completely read all 20 when school started. And so I didn't finish this challenge, primarily because of school. I probably still wouldn't have entirely finished it because Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell was on that list. And I am only 20% done with this book at the end of the year. So I still probably wouldn't have finished that book, but I think I could have gotten to 19 out of 20 read. But it's okay that I didn't. I think I made a really good effort at it. I read a lot of stuff that was pretty great. At the very least, Life After Life ended up on my best of list for the year, which was a huge surprise. And it was a really great challenge. I hadn't set that kind of challenge for myself before, and I realized that I actually quite enjoyed it and want to do it again. So that's how I did with channel and reading goals for the year. Looking at stats, obviously I've mentioned a couple of stats, but I do want to mention a couple of others, and I'll try to insert corresponding graphics so you know what I'm talking about. When we look at my Goodreads goal of 72 books, I did calculate that based on reading 7 books per month, which was rounding up from my 2019 average books per month. I think it was like 6.5 or 6.8 or something, and so I just rounded it up and set that as my new goal. This year I did read on average 7.8 things, though that does include class reading, so that number's maybe a little high. Altogether, and again, including class readings, I read 27,199 pages. I'll put that stat up here, for an average number of pages of 2,267 per month. And I didn't go any month without reading at least something. My lowest pages in a month was November, and that was 1,252. And that was because I was really freaking busy with school. No surprises, right? My best month was April, the first month of my unemployment. Again, no real surprises. That was 3,092 pages. And I had 2 months this year that I averaged reading 100 or more pages per day, which was really, really great. I technically only DNF'd one book this year. That was Burned by Magic by Jasmine Walt. I got about 60 or 70% into this book and I just didn't want to finish it, so I didn't. However, I did basically, it's not in my spreadsheet because I just decided to delete the entry, but technically I also DNF'd Woven in Moonlight. I read the first chapter and then decided to DNF it, and have since not regretted that decision. I've read several reviews from readers who know a lot more about Bolivian history and culture and are themselves Bolivian, and apparently the book's very, very problematic. I DNF'd it before I even realized that that was the case. I DNF'd it because I read something in the acknowledgements that was a huge red flag to me personally and what I like to read. So like technically I DNF'd it, but again, I only read one chapter, so I didn't leave it in my spreadsheet. When we look at everything that I read, I'll pop in a little graph here. This is pages read by genre. And I find this very interesting, not surprising, but interesting. You can see that 44% of the pages I read this year were fantasy, and 28.7% were science fiction. And every other category is pretty minor. Mystery crime got 7.4, and historical got 8.5. I do separate out urban fantasy, paranormal, and magical realism from fantasy. Technically, those are genres in fantasy. It's really more like 45.5%. Basically, what that boils down to is that almost 75% of the pages I read this year were SFF. I'm very predictable. And when we look at the age group breakdown, you can see that 77.4% of what I read was adult, 16% was YA, and 6.5% was middle grade. So yeah, I read adult SFF. That's just what I read. And then the last graph I pulled out was this one, and this shows the spread of books by decade they were published in. So you can see that far and away the bulk of what I read was published between 2010 and 2019. That constitutes 53 of the things that I read. 10 things I read this year came out in 2020. 10 came out between 2000 and 2009. So literally 73 of the things I read came out after 2000, the year 2000. And then really it's just a smattering of like 2 to 4 books in the other little decade. And this got me thinking, because I do think that the spread is something I want to work on more this year. Those are the main stats. There are other stats I could talk about, like basically far and away I read primarily female authors. I primarily read books with either a female protagonist or an ensemble protagonist. Like, these aren't surprising. And I read a small amount. I wouldn't say I read diversely enough. I think I need to work on that. I think 8% of what I read was LGBTQIA plus in some way. 13% was racially diverse. 9% of what I read I marked as combo, which usually means it's racially diverse and LGBTQIA plus. That's what, 9, 8, 17. So like 33% of the things I read this year were diverse in some way, which I could definitely do better. And I'm actually kind of shocked I didn't. Well, no, I'm not shocked that I didn't read more queer lit, mostly because I think in past years, a lot of the queer lit I've read has been in the romance or romance adjacent categories, or like self-published stuff. And I didn't read as much of that this year because I've really kind of stopped reading romance at all. That's definitely something I can work on more. Though I'm kind of looking at this and I'm wondering if I mismarked some stuff. Like, I feel like I read more racially diverse authors than just 13%. You know, I can only go by what I actually marked in my spreadsheet. But anyways, when I set out to make reading goals for myself this year, you know, there's the easy one. How many books do I want to read? I want to read 52. I'm lowering my goal this year because I want to be realistic. School goes on until June, and I'm not going to be reading. I'm going to be reading a few books for school. In winter quarter, though, all of the books I'm reading are ones I'm assigning myself. My professor's not assigning any. It's all going to be articles, which articles take a lot of time for me to read. Even though they're shorter, they're very dense, and I need to be like thinking about them critically as I'm reading them. So they take up more time. And so realistically, you know, I'm only going to be trying to read maybe 2 to 3 books per month for myself. So I want to set myself a reasonable goal for the year. And for me, that's going to be 52 books. That's an average of 1 book per week. I think that's pretty doable. Kind of tagging on to that comment about how many books I DNF'd. This year, I do want to be better about DNFing. I think if a book is going to be a 2 or 2.5 star, I need to just go ahead and DNF it. I feel very strongly about DNFing books I actively don't like, you know, like One Word Kill. DNF'd the crap out of that because I found it so offensive, you know, and I feel very strongly about that. But sometimes it is harder to DNF a book that's just kind of like average. Like, there's nothing offensive about it. It's just not like the greatest thing ever. Sometimes that is a hard decision to make. And so this year I want to challenge myself to be maybe a little bit more strict about that. And just, you know, being like, it's okay to walk away and not finish the thing if it's just kind of an average use of my time. Basically, I want to hold myself accountable to valuing my own time more. There we go. And then growing on my TBR versus library split. I am going into this year with a more clear idea of how many physical books I own. According to Goodreads and my latest update of my personal library, I own 203 physical books that I want to read or reread. The rereads are things that I have read them in the past, but it was prior to booktube, prior to Goodreads, and it's been so long I would like to just reread them. So 203 things. I'm not setting myself any sort of shelf goal. I have to read 50 books. I have to bring my TBR down to a certain number. I'm not going to do that. But I do want to grow on this idea of proportion. Last year it was 60 to 70%. Couldn't quite do that. I did 38%. So I want to grow on 38%. I want to challenge myself so that 50% of the things that I read come from my TBR. That's going to include my physical TBR, and it's also going to include my Kindle, so my digital TBR. I think that is a good 50% is like a good balance between challenge and doable. And that is kind of like the running theme for 2021. Challenge, but doable, realistic challenge. In that same vein, I want to continue challenging myself to pick up those longer books that I find intimidating and reading them at, a good pace, not letting them put me into a reading slump. So just in general, I want to continue to increase a little bit that average page length of books that I read. Not to say that I'm going to stop reading short stories. I'm definitely not going to stop doing that. Not to say I'm going to stop doing novellas, because like I have said often, novellas are kind of like my sweet spot length, but I do still have some long ass books that I want to get through. So, it was 315 last year. Maybe I could get it to like 325 this year. That would be pretty cool. And then finally, my last big reading challenge for the year is going to be the 15 books I want to read in 2021. I really liked 20 and 2020. I liked the way that rolls off the tongue. Because of my time constraints, I know 20 challenging books is not probably doable for me, but 15 was doable last year when I had more time. So 15 is going to be my, push goal for this year, basically to match it. So I've got this annual TBR I can draw from. I'm going to be making an updated TBR jar where I'll have all the books in the jar, because I also really enjoyed doing that every month, picking out a couple to read that were kind of random. I will be posting a video where I go through the 15 books I want to read this year soon. Hopefully that'll be up in the next day or two. So look out for that. And yeah, I think those are all of my reading goals. I did write myself down a couple of challenge goals. First one, don't disappear for 2 months. We'll see if I can do that. Second one, more creative projects / don't be lazy. A week ago me was like writing shade for future me, because I'm feeling kind of lazy. Will that happen? I don't know. Let me know down below. Tell me like a reading goal that's kind of different for you this year. It could be like the number of books you want to read, or it could be like something about your TBR, or maybe do you want to try out a new genre, or try out like maybe read more adult or more middle grade or something like that. Let me know down below one of your goals, because I'd love to hear. I wish all of you a good luck on 2021. Wishing myself luck in 2021. I've already started the year out by reading 3 articles for class that equated to about 60 very mind-bendy pages about neuroscience and art. And I'm feeling a little tired right now. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be that annual TBR, which I'm actually like really excited about. So stay tuned for that. See ya.